At one point or another, every single one of us feels the need to build turds in Minecraft. Not a lot of people teach you how to build these in Minecraft. It's not really a very popular topic. I've got you covered. I have got you covered. Today, I'm going to teach you how you can build turds in Minecraft like an absolute professional. Right, don't judge, okay? There are people that will find this useful. There are people that need to build turds, whether it's for one reason or another. They just need to build them, they need to learn how to do it properly. With that being said, let's get started with our first example over here. And so this first bit of building advice is for the people that don't want to build giant massive piles of turd. This right here, this is a little bit of leaf litter. It resembles turd very much. It resembles it very well, right? It looks like a lovely, lovely kitchen floor, lovely kitchen, right? And then all of a sudden, we have a turd on the floor. And the usual culprit. Isn't that right, bad boy? The same way we got blood for redstone, leaf litter also has a nice niche little use case. Now I've got a second example here with the leaf litter inside of a toilet this time. And as you can see, it resembles turd very, very well. It looks really good in the toilet, and you can also add a little bit of birch wood in the background, make it look like the toilet has been used a bit more, or like there's a few stains of turd on it. Also, if you're looking for a quick toilet design, this one's pretty quick to do, pretty cool, pretty easy, pretty simple, and looks quite good. Now, these two examples were exclusively for the leaf litter. Now we'll be moving over to our giant piles of material, right? But before we do that, I want to go over which blocks you can use for your material. So I think just about every single brown block could do very well. The desaturated ones might be used to make drier looking turds, whilst the more saturated ones might be used to create more recent happenings. So we'll move over to our first turds build of the day, and this one over here is the big brown cucumber, right? Now, I will tolerate block vomit for this one because vomit and turds are very closely related, right? So if you want to throw in many different variants of brown, there's no problem. Be my guest, right? Block vomit is allowed for turds. But gradients do still go a long way, just putting similar blocks next to each other makes a big difference as well. Right, just a little tiny bit of a blend, right? Nothing too special. When you're creating a brown cucumber, what you need to keep in mind is its width and its shape. Right, you don't want to make it too wide because then it's no longer a cucumber. We don't want to make it too thin because now it's a worm. Another thing you can do is a nice little detail here. Adding a black stone button on the side of it makes it look like it's being infested with flies. And also make sure to give it a little brother or sister right next to it, right? Obviously no two turds are the same size, so maybe make one bigger, the other one smaller. And there's usually only like a pair of two, not really three, but there could be three as well. It all really depends on how it happens, but usually it happens in pairs and one's usually bigger than the other. But we've got a few variants of this specific turd. So over here we have the dried cucumber turd. And well, this one is just basically a little more desaturated, right? Not too dark, just using more pale blocks, because we really want to get it to look a lot more dry, a lot more crusty, a lot more brittle, and yeah, that's what we're trying to get across with this. So make sure to use a bit of coarse dirt, maybe some mushroom block, mud bricks, packed mud, and jungle planks will do a very good job with this. Now another example over here I have is the unproperly digested cucumber turd. As you can see here, we have a few bits of food. So over here we have a bit of sweet corn, right? It's just a bit of sweet corn dotted around, and maybe a bit of carrot as well. You usually see happenings like this all over the place, right? Anytime you have sweet corn, you might have a look and you might see this. Also, another thing I forgot to mention is that the dried cucumber turd usually doesn't have many flies sat on top, right? That's because it's dry and it's devoid of nutrients. I mean, even turds have expiry dates. But yes, we'll be moving over to our last example of the cucumber turd, and that would be this one here, the smelly shoe cucumber turd. Now with this one, you want to give a little bit more surface area, right? You want to integrate part of the turd into the ground and make it look like it's been spread over a larger area by something that has compressed it. And of course, to help out the detectives, you should add in a few prints of turd resembling someone's foot, right? So if you want to make it look like someone stepped in your turd, then make sure to add in a little footprint here, maybe a second one there. And the further you go, the more footprints you make, the more faded you want to make them as you go along, right? Because you can only get so much ink in one single press, am I right? But right, that's all I have to say about the cucumber turd variants. I want to move over to the blackberry turd variants, and this over here is, you might find something like this in like a meadow or somewhere like that, right? A little field, or maybe in the woods, right? These are usually caused by, say, rabbits or deers, and they're usually extremely dark. They resemble blackberries, and whatever you do, if you see some of these on the floor in nature, they usually aren't blackberries, so you probably wouldn't want to eat them, but then again, I can't be an expert in everything. Try it if you want. Now, obviously, All of these turds are scaled up a little bit. So if you want to make smaller Blackberry turds, then I recommend you use some Blackstone buttons, but you're not going to be able to get the same level of density and proximity and randomness when you do it like this, because again, like for the buttons, despite them being just one block away, they got a massive gap in between them, so they look a lot more spread out, right? And turds usually aren't very spread out unless they've been stepped in. This is always a nice little fun design, probably the easiest one to do. Requires very few blocks. Looks quite good in many circumstances. Now we'll move over to our next one, and this over here is a puddle of diarrhea. It does look a bit like dried turd because I did use the same blocks. But remember, diarrhea usually is a bit more faded, right? It's usually a lot more pale and more liquidy. Also, you want to make sure there's a few undigested bits in there. So I've got a few acacia logs here, and maybe just make it a bit more noisy, make it look like it's not digested properly. Also, as for why it's flat, that's because diarrhea is a liquid, so it will spread out into a little puddle, right? We'll move over to our next variant over here, and this over here is bird turd. Now, I've personally built bird turd in many different scenarios. It's one of my favorite turd designs. It's really simple to do. If you want, you can put a little culprit on top, maybe on some sort of branch, on some sort of tree. Now, bird turd is very interesting because as opposed to all the other turd variants, it's very grayscale. So usually when you spot bird turd, it's like a little liquid puddle like this, but at the top there's a little tiny bit of dark matter, and I've got an explanation for this. Reptiles and birds have a thing called a cloaca. Now basically they're multitasking, right? They don't really bother with the division of things. They use the same opening for all the action, so they don't really care about sorting things correctly. They just dump it all out at once. So yeah, this is basically number 1 and number 2 in one, and yeah, it's basically just meant to look like a nice yogurt with a bit of a little black spot there. But yeah, these are always very simple to build. Nice, easy grayscale, tiny little things. Nothing too much to complain about. Now move over to our next one, and this over here is our classic chocolate ice cream steamer. To convey that it smells, you probably want to add a few bits of green steam, right? You can do it with glass panes, and yeah, it looks very, very smelly. Also, this can probably be a bit tricky to build very well, you know? Also, the bigger you make it, the more detail you can get into it. But yeah, usually the way it works is it's basically a very, very elongated pickle turd, but just like sort of curled up in this sort of position, so it resembles ice cream, right? And now to convey a bit of depth, what we want to do is we want to add the darker blocks at the bottom as if there was a shadow being caused, and then the lighter on the top as if there's like light coming from the top, right? So it really, really does look like it's been curled up and not just like a mountain of turd, right? Also, again, don't forget the flies. Flies can really add in a little bit of detail and make him look a bit more realistic. And we'll move over to our next and final example over here, and this here is our Jurassic Park chocolate ice cream steamer with a bit of personality. Adding eyes to literally anything will give it personality. And this steamer looks very, very unimpressed. I would probably look the same if I was a turd. I probably wouldn't be too happy about much, but he seems to be chilling. He seems to be alright. He's looking at me going like, dude, are you going to finish talking, wrap up this video? And the answer is yes, I'm going to wrap this video up. I hope you enjoyed this very educational video. I hope you learned something new. About 5 people are going to use this in their life, and I'm really happy with that. So I'm delighted that you watched to the end, and I hope you learned something new. This has been all from me, Mystical Plays, and I'll see you again in another video. Bye-bye.